My great-grandfather, Captain Ars Richard Magnus Paulsen, immigrated from Germany to San Francisco, and he was a sea captain there at the port of San Francisco. And then when they were, dredging here and building the port here, all the new commerce started to come into the port of San Pedro, port of LA, and so he moved his wife and his 2 young sons here to San Pedro in 1919, 1920. And since he was a sea captain, he would work in the new port down here. In the early 1930s, he created and founded the Port of Los Angeles Stevedore and Ballast Company. By that time, my uncles were old enough to longshore and import and offload the ships. He also had a naval contract, so he was, his company was in charge of getting all of the naval equipment off the ships and storing them there at Warehouse 1. So my grandfather would tell these stories when I was younger that, you don't pay attention when you're 8, 9 years old, but as you get older, you ask more questions because it's fascinating. But he remembers being a little boy and going into Warehouse 1 and these huge, massive textiles, from India are just there waiting to either be, railed out or, shipped somewhere else once they came into the port. Fast forward to like 1934, big Bloody Thursday here at the port. 2 of my uncles were charter members of ILWU. And we actually still have their strike cards, which is pretty, fascinating to look at a lot of that, memorabilia. My family has been down there, since the 1930s. Then along, comes our infamous World War II, when we went to war with, Japan, Germany, and here in San Pedro, our country was doing some awful things where we were rounding up Japanese Americans and, putting them in camps. And not too many people talk about what happened to other immigrants that had come here to, the port of LA. And so my great-grandfather was from Germany, and he, immigrated to San Francisco and then ended up here. And since he had access to the port and to the shipping companies, it was said that him and my oldest great uncle were running guns and, shipping the guns overseas. And so they actually arrested them from the port of LA, and they spent 2 weeks, in jail going through questioning, and, they were cleared. But the company never really, got to recover from that. Once you're accused of something like that, they lost their naval contract, and then the lease from Warehouse 1 was revoked. And so he sold the company. He sold the company to Metropolitan Stevedoring, who still is hugely successful and, pretty much in control of all the West Coast, the stevedoring up and down the coast. So that's the story of the sea captain, from Germany that ended up in San Francisco and then ended up here in the port of LA.